Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week on 1029 The Game, the Broad Street South Network. So glad that everybody could join us this evening. Uh, Kevin and I are going to talk about some exciting news going into the NFL draft, and it's just so much to talk about. And Kevin, how you doing, man? You excited for I used to call it Christmas in April. You know, some fans, this is their big day. I used to get more hype for it, head up to Radio City Music Hall, sit there all day with all the guys and watch all the picks. But, you know, now I'm just more keyed into the games. But how do you feel about the draft going into it?
Let's do it already. Months and months of speculation about who's going to go
Yeah.
where, who's going to do this, all the combine stuff, everything else. Let's do it now. Let's get this whole drawn out process of one day of draft, another day of draft, another day of draft. Let's do it and see where everyone lands.
Yeah, Kevin, it's funny you talk about that because I remember I covered the draft live in New York for at least good 5 6 years, and it was basically a 2 day event. You went there early Saturday morning and it kicked off, and you were basically there all day Saturday, and then Sunday was for the diehards. That was the guys. They really want to see the diamonds in the rough. I think it was rounds 4 through 7. And that's where you start talking about guys. Um, Mr. Relevant and is a guy from the military academy going to get his opportunity in the sixth, seventh round, something like that. But yeah, I'm with you. You got some people. Hey, God bless them. It's their whole focus is only around the draft. And you wonder what they do for the rest of the months out there because to me, it's all about building your roster, getting ready for the actual season. So a good GM is going to use the draft to bring some new lifeblood into his team. Each team will have 90 players on their roster going into training camp at the end of July, early August. Most of them are coming into camp, and that's what they need to use it for. So, yeah, exciting times. We'll see how it plays out. Uh, it is must see TV because people cannot get enough of the NFL. I mean, even a draft, it's on the NFL Network. It's on, I think, ABC. It's on ESPN. So they're just covering all their bases. And this year, it's a traveling show. It's not like when I used to go, and you knew it was in New York every year. Now it's all over the country, and teams bid for it. And not surprisingly, it was Philadelphia. I really think that showed that hosting his draft was pretty cool because I remember they had the whole Benjamin Franklin Parkway cleared off, and they were talking about close to, I don't know, 500,000 plus people were out there watching the draft.
It became a spectacle now at this point in this juncture of it. I mean, you're in Vegas, you're in beautiful Detroit this year. I mean, there's other places they put it all around the country now, and I think that's cool. I think you do that. You show different cities show how they feel about the draft. And it is a huge traveling thing too. They pack these cities with doing it instead of just having it over at Radio City all the time. Now you can go to other cities and they can get some of that revenue as well.
Yeah, and it's going to energize the fan base, and it makes for good TV. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of lull between these picks. God bless the NFL Network and ESPN with these uh, heartstring type stories. They're talking somebody's football coach, his little league coach, just getting everybody prepared for that big moment. But I just remember sitting there. Why are they on the clock? We know who they're taking. Come on, just pull the trigger. Why are we all sitting here for I think what is it, 10 minutes between each pick in the first round? It can make for some long time. But Kevin, I said I was going to do it. This is early on when we were talking about the draft. I said, all right, well, we're going to kind of get the grade book out on Howie Roseman and the Eagles brass. We're going to look at some former Eagles drafts and some picks. And I got to tell you, you're like, wow, these are guys I forgot. And you're like, man, I probably should have forgotten some of these. And, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie likes him because some of these picks, you're like, man, if anybody else made them, they may not have a job. so,
Facts, absolute
uh,
facts.
so how far back do you want to go? I mean, you want we figure Howie Roseman's been in some semblance of the. We'll go back. I'll go to 2010. All right, this is a 2010 draft, and you can just like yeah, I'll say the names and you can digest them and we can talk about whether the pick was good or bad. First round pick number 13 was Brandon Graham. Uh, then you had Nate Allen. You had Daniel Teo Neeson was in the third round. Trevor Lindley in the fourth round. Keenan Clayton in the fourth round. Mike Kafka in the fourth round. Clay Harbor, fourth round. Ricky Sapp was in the fifth round. Sixth round, Riley Cooper. Sixth round, Charles Scott. Seventh round, Jamar Chaney. Seventh round, Jeff Owens. Seventh round, Kirk Coleman. Now, before you chime in, a couple things jump out to me. All right, we know Brandon Graham, high pick. They trade up to get him. Everybody's like, it could be a bust, this and that. But came on of late, had the biggest play, obviously, in the Super Bowl. So that was probably a good pick. But in between Graham and Kirk Coleman, who I used to always say, man, he makes a lot of boneheaded plays, but he became a pretty good pro down in Carolina. He actually made an all-pro team, I think, down there, second team or something like that. So between those guys, not a lot of meat in that sandwich. So what are you thinking in that 2010 draft? I know you want to talk about the greatness. We always talk about the linebackers. Keenan Clayton, Ricky Sapp. I mean, who are these guys?
They're guys that have 9 to 5 jobs now. That's who they are, Lloyd. Kafka, as a coach for the future, if you could have drafted him just to be a coach, that would have been a good pick. We're just going to hold on to you be a
Yeah,
coach. Clay Harbor, probably the best out of that middle mix.
yeah. And Clay Harbor, he was a good guy. I always talked to him in the locker room. And an undersized tight end did a nice job for them. Uh, but he never became that dual threat that they always thought he could be. But I mean, he stuck around for a number of years. And then the second round pick, though, Nate Allen was one of those guys that we've always talked about this, Kevin. They tried to replace Brian Dawkins or fix the safety position ever since he retired, and this is another one of those misses. So, um, yeah, that draft was just like, okay, maybe they got about two or three players out of it.
And if you would have asked
And
any Philadelphia fan their reaction the day of that draft with the first pick, what do you think they did? Boo! They wanted Earl Thomas. They went Brandon Graham. And look where Earl
yeah,
Thomas is now, and as opposed to Brandon Graham, how he's beloved now in
yeah,
Philadelphia.
and Earl Thomas started, we know, great with Legion of Boom. And he got beat down by injuries, and he just was not the same player after that big contract. And, Cam Chancellor was the guy next to him that helped free him up and make a lot of those big plays. And once that fell apart, just wasn't a guy. But Graham has had a great, stellar career and coming back for his 15th season this season. So, done a great job for the Eagles in the community as well. And he's another guy. Always a good quote. He works the media, fan favorite. So, yeah, they got a couple players there, but obviously mostly misses. Now, 2011, this is the one a lot of people say Howie should have gotten a lot of trouble for this draft. But there's one name on here that is the saving grace of this draft in 2011, and he is a sixth rounder. Who would that be?
Sixth rounder from 2011. I
Yeah.
just know the
Now,
first
Andy
three
was
picks
still
were
with the team
brutal.
then.
Oh, I'm gonna take a pass on that one. What you got?
All right. I'll go through the litany, and then right away, I can't give it away. This is all, and you're gonna be like, oh, how to forget this? So first pick number 23, and they always talk about this is the no man's land where the Eagles are this year. They're picking 22. Well, if they stick there, we know how he's moved up and down in the draft, and even last year he traded up to get Jalen Carter. So I'm hearing rumors that they may do it again. But in 2011, first pick at 23 was Danny Watkins, the fireman from Baylor. Second pick, again, we talked about them trying to replace Brian Dawkins at the safety position. Jaquan Jarrett out of Temple. Now, if you remember, we all were like, "Oh, he could be a player." He was terrible. Curtis Marsh, third round, fourth round, and we talked about this famous football family last week or whenever we last talked. How this is the NFL Gold Jacket family. They're probably the only set of brothers in the Hall of Fame. The Matthews family. What a great family are. Well, we got the Fredo of that family.
Uh-huh.
The Philadelphia Eagles did in the fourth round. Casey Matthews in the fourth round. who couldn't play a lick. And I heard his girlfriend got, she wore his jersey to an Eagles game, and she probably wished she didn't. Uh, Fourth round, Alex Henry, who was a kicker who hung around for a little while, but a kicker in the fourth round, and he kind of fell apart. And then, as you know, they brought in a recent kicker who beat him in competition. Um, Fifth round, Dion Lewis, a little running back from Pittsburgh. He hung around for a while, a big, good pass catcher.
Belichick got some
Fifth
use out of
round,
him. Yeah.
yeah, he did. Yeah. Fifth round, Julian Vanderville. I might be saying this wrong. A lineman from Iowa. I don't remember him much. But in the sixth round, pick number 26 in 2011, Jason Kelsey, an
Oh, for the
undersized
love of
center
God, I
from
missed that one.
Cincinnati.
Oh.
Sixth
Yeah.
round, number 26 pick in that round. And they traded up, is from Baltimore. So that was the one guy who saves this draft. And then you have more linebackers. We talked about the linebacker hole. Man, they can't get it right. Brian Roll, Ohio State. Greg Lloyd, the wrong Greg Lloyd. That's not Greg Lloyd. Steelers Greg Lloyd. This guy was from Connecticut in the seventh round. And then some running back named Stanley Haveli in the seventh round. So we'll start moving quick. I know they're like, all right, stop beating us up, Lloyd. But the 2012, this is not a bad group. Some hits, some misses. First round was Fletcher Cox. That was a very good pick, And I remember I covered this draft. I actually went to NovaCare, and I was there when they made the pick, and then they had to interview with him. And, he was just he was like a good old boy. He was like, I like to hunt. I like to fish, and I play football. You weren't getting a lot of good quotes from him. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
this guy he was a gamer, and obviously he just retired. Michael Kendricks, who had a couple good years at linebacker. Finally, they found a guy, but he's Mr. Inside Trading, and his brother
Yeah.
was actually a little better than him. Vinnie Curry, who they gave a contract to in the second round. He had a couple good years as pass rusher, and then he kind of fell off. Then the next pick, this is third round, and when they drafted him, and I met him at training camp, I was like, this guy's kind of goofy, but don't. My cousin always say, don't you talk bad about my Saint Nick, So third round, pick 25, quarterback Nick Foles from Arizona. Brandon Boykin, who was a nickelback. And he kind of, he played for a couple years and I think got hurt and was not the same. Dennis Kelly, an offensive lineman who stuck around for a long time, bounced around the NFL, and I think he was on the Titans last. Then Marvin McNutt, one of the all-time name teams, but not a very good receiver. Brandon Washington, and then a running back named Bryce Brown, who I do not remember. So
I remember Bryce Brown. Yeah, he had a little speed to him, but he did nothing in the NFL.
yeah. So that draft, Nick Foles, Fletcher Cox, in the Pips, like Gladys Knight and the Pips. 2013, Lane Johnson, first round. Zach Ertz, second round. D lineman, Benny Logan, that was a miss, third round. Matt Barkley, fourth round, quarterback from USC. Another, and then here come the DBs trying to the safeties. Earl Wolf, DB, North Carolina State, in the fifth round. Joe Kruger, defensive lineman, I don't remember him, Utah, seventh round. Jordan Poyer, who I think stuck around for a little bit, DB, Oregon State, and then David King, defensive lineman, Oklahoma. So 2013, obviously, you're going to point to the top of this draft. Lane Johnson, he's still there, cornerstone at offensive line, one of the best right tackles in the league. Zach Ertz, he's still got a contract, if you can believe it. The Washington paid him. He's going to be on Washington this season, stuck around, and one of the best pass receiving tight ends, probably in the late, what are you calling it, decade, 2010s or something like that. He was one of the best pass catching tight ends. I think does he still hold the record for the most tight end receptions in a season?
I don't know if he does now or not. I think he was.
Yeah, he did for a number of years.
Yeah,
It's pretty high up there. Yeah.
One
right,
thing.
24.
One thing that
Yeah, go ahead.
Jump in real quick is that people forget, if the Miami Dolphins do not draft Deion Jordan ahead of the Eagles, I guarantee you Chip Kelly drafts Deion Jordan. from his Oregon days. There is no doubt
Oh,
in my
Dion
mind.
Jordan. I
We
forgot that.
wouldn't have had
Yes.
Lane Johnson. We would have had Dion Jordan. So we actually owe the Miami Dolphins an edible arrangement every year on draft day.
Yeah, the chipper. And this was the this is one of there was two drafts where you know everybody can point to Chip and be like, oh, this is his trash. Pick on him about it. So
Yeah.
Andy Reid's and that's the thing. Andy Reid, uh, he was in charge of the last draft. He was in charge of 2012. So and then you get to 2014. This is probably one of the all. This is like wow. This guy went in the first round. So in the 26 picks in the first round, this is probably one of the worst draft picks. Marcus Smith, outside linebacker, former quarterback. I think he had one sack in his career for the
It
Eagles
was such a
at
reach.
number
It was
one.
such a reach for them to draft him right there. From what I remember, like they were afraid he wouldn't, be there when they get a pick in the second round, so they traded back so they could get him then, and it was just bust written all over it. As Howie Roseman was in the basement, not even talking about this. This was all Chip move right there.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely when we were like, what are they doing? And then Jordan Matthews, who hung around the second round, he wasn't bad. And then Josh Huff, Mister, I had a gun over driving over the bridge to Jersey in the third round receiver. Jalen Watkins, another safety where they tried to bring him in, not a replacement. Defensive lineman Taylor Hart, defensive back Ed Reynolds. Now, their interesting pick in the seventh round. This guy stuck around, fan favorite in Philadelphia. Bo Allen from Wisconsin, the former nose tackle. They took him in the seventh round, so that was a good find there. He was a guy who did a nice job for the Eagles. He was on the Super Bowl team, but other than Bo Allen, not a lot in a 2014 draft.
I remember everyone was excited because Jordan Matthews, who had potential, he looked the part, but the big thing was he's Jerry Rice's nephew. Well, he's got to be good then,
Oh, that's right.
that trickles down, right? No, it didn't. It didn't trickle down at all.
Yeah, the nepotism. Yeah, it's just no. And we talked about that earlier with Casey Matthews, and sometimes it's like the Phillies back when we were kids. They always had Ken Brett. He was a pitcher they had, and they always said, "Oh, they took the wrong Brett."
Yeah, it was like the
George
Phillies had
George Brett's brother.
The Phillies had Mike Maddox instead of Greg.
Oh, that's right,
They
Mike
had who
Mack.
else? They had Juan Bell instead of George Bell. It's like they always had every wrong sibling.
That's great. Yeah, unfortunately, it typically, with fathers and sons and brothers, sometimes it just does not equate, down the line. Now 2015. Oh man, this is another one. But they got one or two players. 2015 was interesting because they only had six picks that year. I can't remember if they made a big trade or what it was. But first round pick number 20, Nelson Aguilar, receiver, Southern Cal, and everybody talked about, oh, this is the guy, and he was another one of those Southern Cal guys like um, Mike Williams and some of these other guys that come. USC receivers usually they put up big stats, but some of them do not do well in the NFL. But Dwayne Jarrett is another one I can think of, But they've had some couple hits lately though, Amon Ross St. Brown and a few other guys. But yeah, Aguilar just was not that good. Eric Rowe, another guy who he kind of flamed out here, but the Patriots gave him a look, and he did some good things for them. And then third round, Jordan Hicks, linebacker from Texas. Now we always talk about the Eagles and their difficulty finding that. Now Jordan Hicks played pretty well for them uh, in the Super Bowl year as well, and then they didn't want to pay him, and then he goes to the Arizona Cardinals and kind of fell off after he got his money. But I think he's still bouncing around the league somewhere. Sixth round, Ja'Cory Shepard. Sixth round, Randall Evans, DB. I don't even remember him. And then in seventh round, they took a kicker, which I can't remember. They took another kicker.
Well, the one
And
thing,
the best way to find best way to find kickers is like Elliott. You find them off the street. But go
yeah,
ahead.
oh yeah, the one thing you got to remember though, if it wasn't for Rowe, helping the Eagles win that Super Bowl because Malcolm Butler got sat down. So Rowe actually helped the Eagles out. He did a great job as an Eagle without actually being on the
I
Eagles.
forgot about that. Yeah, the, the infamous Malcolm Butler benching. No one, I think he played one special teams play. No one has ever said why he did not suit up in that game. I guess Belichick said, "Get me a cup of coffee," and he threw it in his face or something. I have no idea what it was,
You'll find
and
out
I
what
always
happened.
thought
You'll find out what happened to DB Cooper before why Malcolm Butler didn't play in that game. They're tight-lipped.
definitely, yeah, it's crazy. That was always like, what happened here? And then 2016, this was a savior. This was a guy. They gave him the big contract, and all a lot of Eagles fans like say he was the almost MVP one year. In 2016, everybody's excited. Carson Wentz, second overall pick. Obviously, we see how that played out, and he's actually still in the league now. He's going to be Patrick Mahomes' caddy, which is not a bad job to have. As long as he gets along with everybody, he'll still have a job in the league. So, Carson Wentz, Isaac Salmalo, who did a nice job in the third round, they got him. Um, Running back Wendell Smallwood, who was a good pass catcher for a little bit, and then he kind of fell off. And fifth round was a good pick too. They got Vitae. I'm not going to try to say his first name, but I think Vitae's now what? He's on a Steel. No, I can't remember what team he's on, but he's still bouncing around
Yeah, he's still
somewhere.
in. Yeah.
And then you had Blake Countess in the sixth round. I don't remember him. Another DB. And then Jalen Mills in the seventh round, which they got a lot of value out of him. He's still in the league. With the Patriots, I think, but he got or the Bills last year, but he's bounced around. The thing is with Jalen Mills, he used to get beat for the Eagles a lot deep, and then they gave up on him, and then Belichick kind of made him into like a zone corner, and he was a more physical guy, and he did pretty well for them. Um, After that, a D lineman, Alex McAllister, I don't remember him, and Joe Walker from Oregon. So they had to get an Oregon guy there, and obviously he flamed out. So 2016, some hits, some misses. 2017, first pick, number 14, Derek Barnett. They traded up to get him. The best thing you can say about him is he laid on the fumble that Brandon Graham caused to seal the Super Bowl. But he's a guy that bounced around the league. I think he's on the Texans now, and just never lived at number 14. And they always kept saying he broke Reggie White's sack
Oh
record
yeah.
at Tennessee, and he just did not live up to it. So he that was a reach that didn't work out. Second round, this was another head scratcher. This guy got hurt at the combine, and you're like, what are you doing? Taking him as second round. Nobody else was even thinking about him there, but the Eagles did it, and they took him high in the second round, at 11th pick in the second round. Sidney Jones from the University of Washington. They took him there. Obviously, never overcame that injury. Uh, all these guys, they were rookies. Luck enough for them, they got Super Bowl rings in their rookie season. All these kids I'm talking about here. Third round, this guy's done well. He's been in the league. He played well for the Bills last year. Rasul Douglas, remember, he played well for the Packers all those years. So he was in the third round out of West Virginia. DB. Fourth round, Mac Hollins.
Ugh.
So he was a
Ugh.
guy that got a special team. I know. He was a good special teamer.
Yeah.
He's a good blocker. It's a kiss of death when they say a wide receiver is a good blocker.
Yeah, he actually did all right with the Raiders, I believe, there like a year or two ago. He actually had some receptions. And it was like, okay. And
Yeah,
it was like, even when Derek Barnett went to Houston last year, he got a couple of sacks as soon as he got there. And I'm like, all right, wait a minute
yeah,
here. You know?
yeah. Eagles fans been waiting on this for a while. Now he wants to do something.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Rasul Douglas plays. Mac Hollins has hung around. Donnell Pumphrey was a smaller running back, hadn't done much lately. Sheldon Gibson, wide receiver. But here's a guy I'll name, and you're like, oh no, Lloyd. Nate Geary, fifth round, undersized linebacker from Nebraska. Remember him? He's super fast to the ball. He was a track champion in high school.
Yeah,
He couldn't
they
tackle.
love the undersized linebacker. It's like in this league today, you do not need the undersized linebacker. I don't want somebody who can cover a tight end that's 6'5". How about we do that? How about we get some guy with some
Yeah,
size?
yeah. Somebody or a thumper. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to just somebody's going to plug the hole. All right, we'll take a couple more and then we'll jump to something else. 2018, not a bad draft. You had Dallas Goddard in the second round. They didn't have a first round pick. Avonte Maddox, Josh Sweat, who's helped out a lot. Matt Pryor, and in the seventh round you had Jordan Mailata. So 18, not bad draft there. 19, they went back to some of their misses. You had Andre Dillard,
Mm.
big miss there. They were just talking about his PFF grade. He went to the Titans and he was one of the lowest rated tackles out there. And for a guy that was taking it, and this is what's scaring Eagles fans. He was the first round pick number 22. So everybody's worried that it's going to be his type of player again. So you had Dillard, second round. You had Miles Sanders, played well until I just never thought he lived up to that number one back potential. And then Carolina gives him money last year. He kind of just underachieves. Second round, number 25. And this pick will always be like, why did they take him? They could have taken DK Metcalf. Who
Oh,
is this?
JJ. Oh, JJ. Arcega Whiteside. Hey, he's going to be a tight end now. He's still trying to play in the league.
Oh, my God. Just stop. Go, like Mick would say, go start pumping gas over in Jersey.
Yeah. Terrible pick.
All right. We'll 2020, this is another infamous one. You're like, oh, boy. The first rounder better than the second rounder. The second round is way better than the first rounder. So first round, 21, Jalen Reagor, receiver. It's like, oh man. And he stuck around. I think he's now on the Patriots, returning kicks, but for the value at that pick, it's like, come on. But the second round pick, number 21, was Jalen Hurts. That was actually a very good pick by the Eagles, and he turned out to be way more than they thought he would. Remember, they said, "Oh, he's going to be a gadget guy." They're going to move around a formation and do some wildcat with him and all that, and come a lot better passer than a lot of us expected watching his old tape from Alabama and Oklahoma. The thing is, obviously, with Jalen Hurts, uh, he's got to just get his consistency down. This year, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, forcing the football way too much. So I think they're going to blame it on Brian Johnson and kick him out the door, but we'll see if Kellen Moore can fix Jalen Hurts. So, what are you thinking in terms of Jalen Hurts and his maturation going into this season?
I think this is a huge year for Jalen Hurts. He had basically snuck up on everyone year. When they made the run to the Super Bowl, it's like nobody really knew how to prepare for him right then. They had a whole off season. They looked at a lot of film and everything else, and then once again he came back to earth last year. So the work that he puts in this off season with Kellen Moore, and the one thing you have to say about Hurts as well, it's like he really has never had continuity with offensive coordinators, going from college to the pros. And
Right.
just to get him in a system for at least 2 years, 3 years in a row to see what he can actually do would be beneficial to this guy without question.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they're making a consistent effort to surround him with the right type of weapons. For so many years it was like, oh, they need this, they need that, and on the offensive side of the ball, it's almost like a luxury at this point. All the weapons that they have, but now that they've added Saquon Barkley, um, so we'll segue and jump to the current draft situation as the Eagles head into the draft starting Thursday night. They'll have the 22nd pick. We're talking NFL draft, particularly looking at the Eagles roster and needs. We had a little fun exercise looking at some of the past drafts, and obviously, hey, Howie, make sure you're studying. Do better. I think a big thing is he needs to listen to his staff and people that he had on the Eagles scouting department. The Eagles have had so many quality people leave their scouting department and go other places, like Andrew Barry, who's the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. You had Lewis Riddick, who loves criticizing Howie. I think something bad happened there when he kicked him out the door. But I think if it's a collaborative effort, the Eagles will have there's enough talent there. They should have a quality pick, and you always want, And when fans say to me, "Oh, Lloyd, you got to wait," you now need your first round pick and your second round pick at the least to be able to jump in and be solid contributors right away. So, um, at number 22, Kevin. So I was looking, I've looked at the mocks and all that stuff, and like we were saying over it's draft overload, but.
Oh yeah.
uh, so let's see. So at number 22, yeah, I'll give you some of the names that I'm seeing, and they're actually putting probability on some of these picks. Gambling's so prevalent out there, so some of these guys get odds and all this stuff. But you have Cooper DeJean, who's a cornerback slash safety from Iowa. He's getting a lot of action in terms of the Eagles. Edge rusher, I hope I'm saying this right, Latu Latte from UCLA. Cornerback Nate Wiggins from Clemson, and offensive tackle, which a lot of people are targeting since it's such a deep group. You have Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. So, in any of these names jump out, if the Eagles stay at 22, in your mind?
Once again, that's a two-parter question because I don't think they're staying at
Sure.
22. I don't think you think they're
Yeah.
staying at 22.
Yeah. Me
Howie's
neither.
got a lot of picks to move up and get somebody where nothing's ever guaranteed, but at the same time, more of a slam dunk possibility than drafting at
Yeah.
22 because you've already just stated how they usually draft around the 20s in that no man's land. So the quicker he can move up, the further he can move up, I should say, the better off he'll be. That being said, I think it's offensive linemen the way they're going to go. We talked about it on the last show a little bit after we broke down. All right, they
Yeah.
signed this guy, they did this, they did that. What's left? Offensive line. Two of the names that I've seen that weren't on your list was it J.C. Latham, an offensive lineman. Was he out of Alabama? That was a
Okay.
name I saw thrown around. And the
Yeah.
one kid, I forget his first name. His last name is Mims. He's kind of a project. They have him going. Where is he at? Right here. Oh,
Yeah.
was it Darius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia. But the one thing I heard
Okay.
about him is he's only played in like 7 or 8 games. He's a project. You cannot reach for a
Yeah.
project with a first round pick with this team that you think can go to the Super Bowl. You need somebody like we just said, it's that can come in and play right away. I don't want to have like Mailata where he was drafted. You had time to groom him. You need someone in that first round that can hit the field running.
Yeah, and the thing is, Kevin, everybody's talking about long term. Can they replace, Lane Johnson? He probably has about 1 to 2 years left to play, and then obviously Steen, who they have at the left guard position, that may be the spot where they say, okay, we may need to shore that up. Yeah, Amarius Mims is offensive tackle that you were talking about, and most mocks that I'm looking at have him at the end of the draft. But he did play only 803 snaps his whole college career, so he's a guy, could be a project, and I see project from Georgia. I didn't go through the list, but there was somebody that was a project. They took number one from Georgia years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there
Oh, what was his last name was Thomas. I cannot remember his first name. Bernard Thomas.
anytime you hear
There it is.
anytime you hear project, it's like no, no more projects in the first round. Give me a project in the fourth round at the earliest. It's like hit
Right.
some guys that can play right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now J.C. Latham, he is an interesting name. As you said, he only allowed 14 pressures in his entire season in 2023. I mean, his pass block win ratio is tremendous, and he's one of these big, long guys. He looks like he was made to be a bookend tackle. So, it's not. I know everybody's like, "Oh, Lloyd, who cares?" But you got to build up front, and that's why the Eagles have been a playoff team for so long. And you talk about the success this year of the Detroit Lions; they had one of the best lines in the league with Paul Sine Panu and the rest of those guys. So you got to build up front, and I just have a feeling that's the way the Eagles are going to go. Obviously, everybody's talking about corner. Darius Slay, getting a little older. He seemed to be okay, but Bradbury, they seem to want to bring him back. They gave him all that money. He had a lot of trouble. We've talked about their difficulty in replacing Brian, Dawkins at the free safety position. They just have not been able to do that. And then at nickel, they're bringing back Avonte Maddox after they kicked him out the door and nobody else wanted him. So defensive secondary is interesting. And then named Cooper DeJean, obviously, he's been bounced around. A guy from Iowa has return ability and can play in his zone and maybe some nickel, possibly some free safety. So his name's around. But I wanted to run the name by, and you and I talked about off air, Nate Wiggins from Clemson. Now, the thing is with Nate Wiggins, he's a guy, he's going to be a cover corner, but Kevin, that's it. He don't want to tackle nobody. That's the
We've already got
first
that
thing every
position
scout I
filled.
talk to.
We got that position filled. We got plenty of guys that don't want to tackle. Watch that Tampa Bay playoff game. Hey, we got a whole team of them. So we're good on that one. I don't need that.
Yeah. Very sticky in coverage, but they said he won't hit anybody. Like if you're asking him to roll up and tackle a running back coming out of edge, forget about it. So I just don't see that style fitting in Philadelphia. I always talk about, and my buddies, this is when I had season tickets where I was writing, they used to always talk about Mr. Softy, Bobby Taylor. He won't come up and hit nobody.
Yeah.
So you don't want anybody like that. So
No,
I
in
just think
turn,
the Eagles
I
shy
change that
away.
around then. Give me Sheldon Brown who can stick somebody like he's stuck.
Oh
Reggie Bush.
yeah,
Give me a Sheldon Brown type that'll hit somebody. That's what I want to
yeah.
see.
Yeah, and interesting enough, you bring up that draft. That 04 draft. There were two guys. They took two corners at the top of the draft: Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown. And both of them were SEC corners, guys that were physical but also could cover, and they were building blocks. So that was the last time the Eagles really took a corner that high, and now may be the time. And that, as we were saying earlier, corner is a very deep draft as well as the offensive linemen. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about at the top, quarterback and receiver, and we'll jump into that in a minute. You're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Broad Street South Network, and we are talking with Kevin Midget, my normal co-host. We're excited to have you in this evening. We're talking about the NFL draft, getting everybody ready. We started with the Philadelphia Eagles because that's where we're based here, and we'll start talking about other teams' needs. But before we get back to the draft and talk about I think we beat the quarterbacks enough, but we'll talk about them a little bit. But speaking of quarterbacks, and we saw this 2022 draft class, what a mess of quarterbacks, and it just showed you. We went through a couple weeks ago with Jovan Alford was on. I went through all the bonus baby first round quarterbacks who are now busts. And today we saw another one of these quarterbacks moved. In that draft class, obviously the only one left with his original team is Trevor Lawrence. He's doing very well with his team, but you saw Zach Wilson. They gave up on him. The New York Jets shipped Zach Wilson off to the Denver Broncos, and it was basically for nothing. So they send him. In return, the Jets get a 6th-round pick, but they send Zach Wilson and a 7th-round pick to Denver. So talk to me a little bit about Zach Wilson. I don't know if you're a fan of Hard Knocks. I watched a lot of that, him and Aaron Rodgers, and he's another one of these guys. They just got so enamored with him during the pre-draft process that we talked about, all the hype and the BS, this guy throws a perfect ball, etc. So, are they going to be able to save Zach Wilson in Denver?
I think first of all, they're panicking. That's what they're doing right now. Sean Payton's there, and he's like, I need a quarterback right now. So I mean, you kick the tires on him. I mean, basically, you give up a 6th, and you still get a 7th back, and you get a guy who was the number 2 pick overall in the draft. So, I mean, I think you'd be foolish not to make that trade if you're Denver. Because if you look at all these drafts, like this year with all the quarterbacks, 2 might be good. 2 of them might be good.
Right. If they're lucky, yes.
Yeah, you can't tell me the difference between, was it Bo Nix, Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy. He's flying up the draft boards, and I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, everyone's panicking so much for a quarterback because, Caleb Williams is going to go 1, Daniels is going to go 2, and May's going to go 3. and then everyone's just going to rush in for fool's gold trying to get the next quarterback.
Yeah. And they're all. I know everybody's trying to get the next Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid had the foresight. Him and Brett Veach, they identified Patrick Mahomes. They got ahead of a lot of teams. He was kind of sitting there, and then they got him, and it was kind of a luxury pick because they still had Alex Smith. He sat and watched until the last game of the season, his rookie year, and they finally brought him out of bubble wrap. Nobody knew he was going to be who he was, but it's the over evaluation, analysis paralysis with these quarterbacks that we talk about so much. You know, misevaluate, and their coach and GM killers, and a lot of these guys when they make that pick they don't survive it, but and they give them so much money, and now the pressure is to play them right away when a lot of these guys could take that Steve McNair route where he sat for a couple of years. It was behind Chris Chandler of all people, and he learned and developed for the Houston Oilers. Just an example, but there's been guys successful like that, but it's so hard to find a Patrick Mahomes, and there's just reach after reach, and I have a lot of faithful emailers and are asking me about all these quarterbacks. I just say, God, take it with a grain of salt because you know we were just talking about Nick Foles was a third round pick, and he led the Eagles to a Super Bowl win. So, sometimes at the top of the draft it's the right guy, but other times later on in the draft you can find that diamond in the rough. Russell Wilson, I think, was a third round pick. Obviously, everybody talks about Tom Brady, a sixth round pick 199. But a lot of these guys in the first round are quarterbacks. They've been coddled and talked about ever since they were in high school. They were a 5-star draft pick and a high school signing day and all that. And now everybody's even starting to talk about Arch Manning,
Oh, yeah.
who lit it up at the University of Texas spring game. For all season he was their third string quarterback, and now they're saying, oh, he's the next big thing. But you just never know. So that's my thing on a quarterback. So as you said, we know the Bears. It's a foregone conclusion. They take Caleb Williams. We'll see if he's able to save Matt Eberflus's job there and Ryan Poles, the general manager, because they have a lot of work to do. They've invested a lot in that team this all season with Keenan Allen and a bunch of other picks. But with a rookie quarterback, I just think he's going to struggle. Not everybody's going to be C.J. Stroud. So I won't beat the dead horse. I know how you feel about Caleb Williams. We won't make Kevin hold his nose this week.
Yeah,
we'll, we'll,
USC
we'll
quarterback,
see how it's
USC
going to
quarterback. That's all I gotta say.
be. Then you talk about Jaden Daniels. I wonder about him being a one-hit wonder. I watched a lot of games with him at Arizona State where he was a dual threat guy, kind of running around, make some plays. But it all came together last year for LSU. He wins the Heisman Trophy. Washington, everybody I talk to, they're enamored with him. They're going, that's going to be their guy. And Cliff Kingsbury's their new offense coordinator. He's their shiny new toy, so they'll trot him out. Jane Daniels, quick synopsis on that. And
I think it's a good landing spot for Daniels, to be honest. I think Washington has some underrated weapons on that offense. They just brought in Austin
yeah,
Eckler. I mean, you sit there, you still
yeah,
have Scary Terry out there. They have and Samuels. I mean, they can do something. It's not like he's going to the Eagles with like Freddie Mitchell and all back in the day, or when
yeah,
Paul and all James Thrash and all that. He's got some guys that can play. So if Kingsbury puts him in the right situation, he might be all right there.
yeah. And yeah, Jawan Dotson, he's there. You've been waiting for him to pop for a little bit. They actually got Olumide Zaccheaus, who played for the Eagles last year. We'll see. Washington, big thing is they got to fix their offensive line. They brought in Dallas's center, Tyler Blance, so he's going to try to shore that thing up. But they also need a lot of help on that offensive line. And we did kind of our preview on the NFC East, and they kind of, I think both you and I kind of agreed they're on the outside looking up at everybody, maybe even the Giants at this point. But we'll see how Jane Daniels fits in there. Drake May, this is one a lot of people have been kicking around, debating. I talked to a guy. He said, "Yeah, Lloyd, his first couple of years in North Carolina were better than his senior year. Senior year, he only completed about 60% of his passes, had some inaccuracy." Is Drake May the next Mitchell Trubisky?
Ooh, that one hurts. How about not Mitchell Trubisky? For some reason, the guy that pops in my head when I think of Drake May is Dave Brown for the Giants. I don't know if it's because he went to Duke and he goes to
Yeah,
UNC, but it's like one of those guys. He'll be a starter in the league, and he might get like one solid year or something like that. I mean, he'll play. He'll hang around for a while, but I don't see him being that guy. I don't see him as a difference maker.
yeah. And it begins, at three, it's the Patriots. They're in a total rebuild. Gerard Mayo isn't coming in there, and that team has a lot of holes on it. So bring him in. Hopefully, a young guy will be able to survive. And the interesting thing is, Kevin, now, do you think J.J. McCarthy could actually get that high to supplant Drake May? Because they're saying the Patriots brought him in. They like everybody's saying the same thing when it comes to J.J. Oh, I like his leadership and he takes command of the huddle. That's all well and good, but can he play? It's easy to play on the University of Michigan undefeated team that had that great defense, and you had two very good running backs, pretty good receivers, and they always put them in good positions. I really don't think they trailed in a lot of games. So, what are you thinking when you JJ McCarthy?
JJ McCarthy, I think, is a bust. I'll go on record as saying that. I don't know if it's because he went to Michigan. Oh, Tom Brady went to Michigan. The thing I look back at is how many teams or how many quarterbacks have won a national championship and have backed it up in the NFL. There's a handful, maybe. There's not a
Yeah,
lot. So you're going with the fact that this guy was on an obviously superior team than anyone else in college football this
yeah,
past season, and he's going to step into the NFL and do the same thing. Not a chance.
yeah, and the University of Michigan, other than Tom Brady, they have not had a lot of great quarterbacks that came out of there into the NFL. I can think of maybe Elvis Gerbach, and not Todd Collins.
Yeah.
Those are the type of guys that come from their scheme. So, as you said, I think a lot of this hype with JJ McCarthy and it points back to his head coach, Jim Harbaugh. I think he's beating the drum around the league for his guy. Harbaugh's back in the NFL, and as you said, he won a national championship, so he's first and foremost. And this pre-draft process, the thing that drives me nuts is the private workout. Oh, he looks so good in his private workout. Of course he's going to look good in his private workout. Michigan made sure, and his quarterback coach made sure they had every throw that he could make in the book, and the ones he couldn't, they didn't show to anybody. So, the thing is about JJ, I heard he does very well in the interview room, very personal and all that stuff. But sometimes you need more than that, and we'll see where he lands. Um, the guy that's most interesting to me, and I think he's going to go four, unless somebody trades up to get JJ McCarthy. But I think if everything holds chalk, at the fourth pick, this would be a steal. The Arizona Cardinals would take Marvin Harrison Jr., who's from right here in the Philadelphia area, St. Joe's prep product, from Ohio State. So, you know, to me, I think he's going to be a elite game breaking receiver right away. That type of impact like Justin Jefferson, like Randy Moss, they had their rookie season. I could see that happening. Kyler Murray should grab the card and run it up to the table if he's there at the draft.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a stud as well. And there are a few teams that desperately need wide receivers, and I don't know if they have enough to move up to try to get that if Arizona trades out of it. You got Buffalo Bills need a wide receiver badly. They
Yes.
lost Davis, they lost Diggs. You got the Chargers lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They need a wide receiver, and Arizona they need a wide receiver. So unless someone
They
really
do.
bowls them over, you take him right there. Unless someone really throws everything at you.
Yeah, and as you said, some of these draft needy teams at receiver, maybe they should put a package together to jump a couple picks. Like the Chargers, are only one pick behind the Cardinals, and you put him in any offense, he's going to be a difference maker. And then you imagine putting him with Justin Herbert.
Oh
That'd be
yeah,
like wow.
oh yeah.
And Kyler's bouncing back. We'll see. I'm not a huge Kyler guy. He makes a lot of plays, but he's just too short, in my opinion, to be that game breaking quarterback in the NFL. And you're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Broad Street South Network. We're talking with Kevin Midget, going very heavy into the 2024 NFL draft, getting you ready for Thursday, and everything kicks off in Detroit. And I know everybody's getting happy and excited, and their team. I love this time to talk because no matter who I talk to around the league, Kevin, everybody says, "Oh, this guy's in the best shape of his life. He's had a great off season. We just can't wait to get him going."
Yeah.
Everybody's ready. Hope springs eternal.
Well, it's that time of year.
So
Everyone's setting up parade routes. They're getting ready. This is the year for my team. This is it. Everyone's healthy. Of course, you're healthy. Season hasn't started yet. Give it a moment.
yeah, even in Cleveland, I guess, right?
Hope springs eternal. You're all right.
Yeah. So as we keep moving, fifth, and we're talking mock only if everybody sticks where they are. And this makes sense in the number 5 pick. We just about they need a receiver. They got rid of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They cut him and then they shipped him off to the Jets. I think that's where he's going to be. Malik Neighbors, another game breaking receiver from LSU. They've just had so many good receivers coming out of there recently, and he would be such a good receiver to partner with Justin Herbert, a guy who's just explosive. And when he gets in open field, he makes people miss tackles. So, what are you seeing when you see Malik Neighbors coming to LSU?
I think after Marvin Harrison, that's your go-to right there. I mean, he could fall at that point because once again, that quarterback thing's going to start to pop. People are going to start to panic a little bit, and it just takes that one trade to shuffle everything. And you've seen it before
Yeah,
where they used to have the guy who sat in the green room by himself, Aaron Rodgers time and everything else. And now you got the poor sad guy who's in the living room with his family all scattered around. He's fallen 10, 15 spots because the
yeah,
draft shifted in a different direction. And it'll happen again. There's no doubt about it.
yeah. And I'll ask you that. That's a good question, Kevin. If you were a big prospect, big time prospect, would you attend the draft, or would you be at home with the friends and the family and in the comfort of your own home, all your family around hugging, kissing. And then I always love the hot college girlfriend that's sitting there. Maybe she's made it too. She's jumping around more than anybody. She's trying to get the MRS,
Oh, yeah.
that big bonus money.
I think unless I was guaranteed to go 24 or higher, I'm not going there. I don't want to be that guy because they only do the first round on day one. I don't want to have to come back for day two. Do I have to buy two suits? Just in case I can't wear the same thing 2 days in a row. So I don't want to hang out by myself. Yeah, the best one I still remember is Joe Thomas. Wanted no parts of. Went fishing with his
Oh,
dad.
that was great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's like whatever. I don't care. I'm going fishing with my dad. I was like off the grid. That was the way to do it.
yeah, yeah. You know, and he knew he was going. He's just like, look, I don't want all the fanfare and typical offensive linemen. And I like when the guys do their own thing. I always it always drives me a little nuts. And when you see them walk across the stage and they're picking up Roger Goodell, the man that's making like $50 million a year to be the owner's puppet.
Oh yeah.
That's not your friend.
No, 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 no.
and they're all hugging him and all that stuff. I'm like, give him a handshake and keep moving.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think they had Holmes way to go, and you always see the pride and all the families and everything. The COVID year was fun in terms of that, in terms of draft, because everybody was at home and they showed all the experiences from the different people, even the coaches at home. Everybody talks about the palatial state of Cliff Kingsbury as he was sitting there, and I think it was Belichick that had his dog up there.
Yeah,
Did he
yeah.
have his dog?
It's the
So
only time you saw
you
the guy.
really got,
He looked human for once. It was the only time you ever
yeah,
saw
he
it.
did. He was smiling.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep. The New York Giants. Now, this is an interesting team. I know we said we were going to focus a little bit on the NFC East. Now, the Giants, they could go a number of ways, and there's a offensive tackle out there. The couple of them out there. They've gone heavy on offensive line the last couple years. They had Andrew Thomas in 2020. They went in the first round with him. Uh, they had Evan Neal, who they went in the first round with in 2022, and Evan Neal has not worked out. He's actually penciled in to be a backup for them. He was not that right tackle they thought they were getting. But I think they've shored up the offensive line enough by they brought in John Runyon Jr. He's going to be their right tackle this year. I mean, their right guard, and they also brought in Aaron Stinney to be one of their guards as well. So last year they went with a center, Joe Michael Schmitz, in 2023 second round. So I think they're shored up on the offensive line. So I think the Giants are going to go another direction. They're going to have. I think this is where the run of the receivers continues because they have not had a game breaker since Odell Beckham left, and now Rome Odunze. You know, I watched a lot of Washington games this year because they were on national TV a lot because they finished, a national championship game. Odunze is another one of these game breakers, a guy who's good after the catch. Um, what are you thinking with him?
I the drafts I've seen, I see them looking at wide receiver as well, especially if there's a quarterback trade and you say like Neighbors Falls, they'd probably take him there. Dunze,
Yeah,
I can see that. They could even go rogue and go get Brock Bowers and sit there and load
yeah.
up another tight end. They
Now
need
he's a
some
guy I
kind of
wanted to
weapon.
talk to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, Brock Bowers is one of my favorite guys in talking about the draft, and we definitely got hit on him because he is that new age H back slash receiving tight end. Everybody wants a Travis Kelsey. We all talk about everybody wants Mahomes. Everybody wants a Travis Kelsey type, and that's what Brock Bowers is. I've been watching him at the University of Georgia since he was like a freshman. He's a guy good in space, finds the holes in his own, great in the red zone as well. Um, Most of the drafts, they got him taken in the top 10, late top 10, probably 9 or 10 that I've been looking at. But, um, last year you saw Dalton Kincaid with the Buffalo Bills. He came and made a great impact. You pair him with Knox and the Bills, that's one of the reasons I think they were okay getting rid of their two top receivers, Davis and that you were talking about. So, uh, Brock Bowers, what do you see when you look at him?
Everything I've seen and I've read about the kid, he's a game changer. He's someone that's going to help your offense, no doubt about it, from day one. The question is, where will he land? I've seen Denver, I've seen the Giants, possibly the Jets. If he falls to the Jets,
Oh,
give Aaron Rodgers another weapon right there. That would be dangerous.
yeah. Now the Jets are picking. I got my list here. All right, so the Jets are at 10. So yeah, that's feasible. So everything I've looked at said, he's going to be available there, and that would be a huge pick. I used to always love going to draft, and that was the thing. All the Jets fans were nuts. Fireman Ed was there, and all them guys. As soon as the pick was announced, like you were saying, oh my God, the camera would go right to them, and they'd be waving around. This guy's a bum, no matter who it was.
Kyle
It was
Brady.
Johnny.
Kyle Brady, the tight
Yeah.
end from Penn
Oh,
State.
yeah. Who had a solid career. He pretty solid a
He
couple of
was all
years
right.
there
I just
before.
remember the crowd losing it when they picked him. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember DeBrickshaw Ferguson. They were kind of lukewarm on him, became a very good tackle for them. And they didn't boo, but they were just like, okay. They always want more.
Yeah, oil.
So, and that's going to be an interesting thing. Now, every team, they offer it to they'll have their little section at Ford Field or whatever, and you'll see them. They'll go to the different camps, but every team, I think, to their high-end season ticket holders, they offer, you know, seats to the draft. So, it's always interesting to see who makes the trip for them. But if I'm a fan, I'd rather go to an actual game somewhere rather than sit around the draft because, like I said, there's a lot of downtime. You know what I mean? So, and then once your team picks, it's like, okay, and it's a 3-day event. So do
Yeah.
you stay for all 3 days? Unless you're a diehard.
Well, it's once
Most
again,
guys take
it's
risk.
go ahead. It's just a
Yeah,
big difference, though, if you're in Las Vegas or you're in Detroit.
right,
It's like,
right.
oh, let's
Yeah,
stick around. I got stuff to do. Detroit, it's like,
yeah. You go to Luxor
mm,
and a few establishments and all the other stuff there. And you can
mm,
have drinks right on the street in Vegas.
oh yeah,
So
oh, yeah.
instead of going to look at the Ford building and I don't know what else. I went to Detroit. I went to the Super Bowl in Detroit, and it was cold out there. That was That was back in '05, and uh, it was a fun place to go, but for the game. But other than that, they could have better venues. I had more fun. The next year was in Miami.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
all right, we'll try to keep moving here on Lloyd Vance Inside Football 1029 The Game, brought to you South Network. We were talking draft. And we got about 15 minutes left. Is there a particular team you want to hit or talk about, or a player,
A couple
or I
players.
could just start?
Yeah,
Yeah, go
a
ahead.
couple players that pop out right now is the one I've seen, and it's kind of interesting how he's going to play in the NFL, is Lad McConkey, the wide receiver from Georgia.
Yes.
To see where he lands and how he will be in the NFL, or is he just a college type wide receiver?
Yeah. Now he's that slot guy, and of course everybody immediately is going to say, oh, Wes Welker and Hunter Renfro and all those types of guys, but I think he's a little faster than them. I think he's going to find space. Obviously, you know, can he be as good as Puka Nakua this year? He was a breakout guy. We'll see. Now, is he related to Phil McConkey,
I
the
believe so.
Giants
Yeah, I believe so.
receiver who everybody in Philadelphia did not like for all his antics?
Oh, I couldn't stand him. McConkey and Bavaro on that team. Oh,
Every time McConkey caught a pass, whether it was 5 yards or whatever, he'd jump up and do this little, like, you know, like do his
hmm
hands and all this stuff. It's like, all right, get out of here.
yeah.
And him and Phil Sims. I I'll tell you, everybody growing up in Philadelphia, everybody used to say, "Oh, you hated the Cowboys, right?" I did not like those Giants teams. I really did not. They were probably more hated to me than the Cowboys.
Well, just the
Um,
the defenses that they had back then. You want to talk about linebackers? Let's see. We're going to have Carl Banks, Lawrence Taylor, and Harry Carson. Deal with
yeah,
that.
yeah. Go ask Ron Jaworski about that group. They were always jumping on his back. I think I remember watching one game where they sacked him like eight to 10 times. I can't even remember, and I don't think he finished the game. They hit him so many times. Jaws had that long streak, and which was admirable, consecutive starts. But man, those Giants teams, as you said, they used to jump on old Jaws, and he's a tough guy for getting through that. Now, uh, I'm gonna Bo Nix. What are we thinking when we talk with Bo Nix? Another quarterback. I think he's more J.J. McCarthy and that group there. Um, had okay career at Auburn, then he goes to Oregon, and his numbers got a lot better. So Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, first thing that pops to mind, Paxton Lynch. It's another,
Oh
yeah,
boy,
it's
he's
another
good.
guy who is going to be drafted higher than he probably should because of the need for quarterbacks, and also the fact that teams need to win now. They need to get that quarterback established right away. So I see him being overdrafted.
Yeah, I think he gets into the first round, and he's a guy who'd be better off sitting and watching for a couple of years rather than thrown out there right away and trying to start him. So I kind of agree with you there. Um, this name is interesting, and a lot of people are talking about the Jets taking him at number 10. Um, and us being in Pennsylvania, and I'll just say Oli Fasanu, offensive tackle from Penn State. He's not a road grader type, but a very good pass blocker. He only allowed 17 pass pressures last year. Another one of these high end tackles that are in this trap. Offensive line, as I said earlier, very deep this season. Oli Fasanu, any thoughts on him?
I think the offensive lineman it's deep right now. Like the one guy I've heard them nobody say a bad word about is Joe Alt from Notre Dame.
How about that? Yes,
Yeah, everyone
yes.
has him locked, and no one's even saying it's a bad pick where they have him going. It's like, yes, that guy, you can start him right now.
Yeah, and another one. His father is a very good offensive lineman. I think for the Bears coming up, and he only allowed 5 pressures last year. He's very long. He's about 6'7", got long arms, prototypical tackle. So I think he's definitely Joe Alt is going to be in the first round. The team's value now. We talked about it earlier. They're looking for quarterbacks. They're looking for receivers. They want somebody to protect the quarterback at left tackle, right tackle, and then they want somebody to cover at corner and then obviously an edge rusher. So these are the prime positions that every GM's looking for. So yeah, Joe Alt is definitely a name I think is going to come off the board early. All the mocks I've been looking at are possibly the Giants could take a look at him at 6, 7. The Tennessee Titans, who are trying to rebuild that offensive line, he may fit there with them. All right, and
Another
yeah. Go ahead.
another name that's popping out to me right now, because once you get to the top 20, you're looking like, all right, majority of these guys, you kind of get the feeling what they're going to do. Once you get like 20 and below, it's kind of like it's a little more dicey. It's a little more risky. Henceforth, why the Eagles have had
Yeah.
not as much success drafting around 22, 23, 24. Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I have seen
Yes.
him going to the Bucks. I think he can play. I think he might be all right there.
Yeah, and Chop Robinson is one of those explosive outside rushers. His college numbers were not the best, but I think in another scheme he would have put up some more numbers. Obviously a lot of times we say Dennis Franklin and his defense may have held him back a little bit, but I do like him in terms of his edge rushing ability and a guy who could slide to that back end of the first round. And as you said, that's where sometimes you were like, wow, that was a good pick at that spot because they're grabbing a player who late in that round who's kind of falling, and one of those good teams steps up and grab him. Look, think about Lamar Jackson, his last pick, number 32 in the first round. The Ravens were so happy to grab him there, and
Yeah.
they were like, give him to me, and it's paid dividends for him. So you got to be. I think all first rounders, as I was saying earlier, they got to be contributors day one, and definitely Chop Robinson, somebody. And I know a lot of Penn State Eagles fans are hoping that the Eagles at 22 would stay there and grab him. I just think they're going to either trade up and grab offensive lineman, but yeah, he'd be a great pick for someone like the Eagles that needs a pass rusher. Another name I'll throw at you, and he's on all name team, and I think we talked about him before. And some mocks are putting to the Eagles. Kool-Aid McKinstry,
Definitely
cornerback, Alabama.
the best name in the draft probably, but it's an injury risk once again with him. He was banged up a little bit, and it comes to the point where the Sidney Jones vibe kicks in. It's like once you've been burnt one time before, it's like no, no, I don't want anybody with any past lingering injuries and nothing like that.
Yeah. And he's another guy, in Alabama, he's playing around out there with a bunch of 5 stars, and it may have been a little bit easier, almost like the Tua effect. You start wondering, okay, was it him or was it the scheme? So, Kool-Aid, great name. I think maybe he'll sneak in at the end of the first round, and um, we'll see how he kind of grades out. Now, another name. All right, we did a good job. We hit a lot of these guys. I brought his name up earlier. Cooper DeJean. Where do you see him fit? He had a very good personal workout the other day. Showed that he's healthy because he had a broken leg last season for Iowa. Obviously, everybody's going to say, is he next Jason Suhorn?
Oh
You
Jesus!
know, what are we thinking with Cooper DeJean coming out of Iowa?
I think there's a risk once again anytime you take somebody who's had an injury issue, and I don't think he maybe goes in the first round. Like you're looking at what, a second rounder at that point. Second maybe falls a little
Yeah,
bit lower than that. There's a couple
yeah,
guys that throw out there. Like he's definitely one of them. You have to get a secondary guy at some point, and that's the thing with the Eagles. They've actually missed out on between secondary guys and linebackers. That seems to be their
yeah,
Achilles heel right there. So a couple of these guys just to throw out there as well. I mean, you have him. Was it Terry and Arnold's probably going to go ahead of that? You have was it Tyler Nubin as well? There's a couple other guys in there, but yeah, he's going to probably go. He'll probably go ahead of Wiggins somewhere in there. Him and Wiggins are flip
yeah,
flop. One, it's like they're 1A, 1B. I think as far as when cornerbacks go.
yeah. And the Eagles have 2 second round picks. So they have the pick at 22 that we talked about. They have number 18 in the second round, which is pick 50. from the Saints, and then they come right back at pick number 21 in the second round, which is 53. So Howie will be able to do some work, and hopefully those second round guys are people that the Eagles can plug in and help right away. Because then after the second round, the Eagles don't pick till the fourth round, pick 120. And then in the fifth round, they have three picks: 161, 171, 172. And then in the sixth round is their last pick, which is a compensatory pick, which is 210. So they have their opportunities, and they may move around because, as I said, they probably want to have a third round pick. I mean, you need to have somebody in the third round that can contribute. And I'll just ask you, Kevin, I know we went through a lot. Are they going to replace Brian Dawkins in this draft, finally find a safety? Is he somewhere on his roster? And will they take a significant linebacker for the first time in forever? The linebacker I want them to take in the second or third round is Jeremiah Trotter's son from Clemson. So what are you thinking in terms of that?
If history has taught me anything, it's the fact that no, they won't be able to do it. No, they won't draft a safety. No, they won't draft a linebacker of any value. I think it would go a long way if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was drafted. You would, at least as far as the fan base, you would have them on your side instead of like looking at your bust picks and everything else. You have to ask yourself as well, when does Howie's little run wear out? Where it's like if they don't start winning, but he's got a lot
Well,
of
that's a good
leeway. I
question.
mean, he got them their only Super Bowl. He got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but if it goes down the road another 2, 3, 4 years, when's Howie's cutoff point? You have to start replenishing these. You can't bring in free agents all the time and try to find some stopgaps at linebacker and safety. You have to address the position it's on the field.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we talked about Sirianni is going to be on a hot seat this season for the Eagles, losing 6 out of the last 7 games, and the team just fell apart, and everybody's blaming him. And he's on the last year of his contract, so that's going to be something that we're going to watch all season and this all season. And getting back to your question, I think Howie is going to last there as long as Jeffrey Lurie trusts him, and he's his right hand man. We know Jeffrey Lurie, he meddles a little bit here and there, but once he picks his guy, whether it's Joe Banner or Harry Roseman, he sticks with them and allows them to run the whole football operation. So yeah, the way the team fell apart at the end of the season, and some of the misses and some of the ones that we've highlighted over the years, you know, you wonder if you have another Andre Dillard example type pick, or a Jalen Rieger type pick, will the organization turn on him like some of the fan base have? I hear a lot of people talking about, he doesn't know what he's doing, but as you said, he brought a lot of goodwill by bringing the only Super Bowl championship to the Philadelphia Eagles.
I just don't want to see the draft is made by the Philadelphia Eagles, and they show all the Eagles executives with Howie Roseman and everyone celebrating, and there's another guy in the corner that's mad. I don't want to see that again. Do you remember that? It was one of those.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like everyone's happy. Wait a minute. There's somebody not happy over there with this pick, and Howie has
yeah,
to go over and console. No, it was a good pick. It was a good pick.
yeah, I'm friends with a couple former GMs, and they tell me a lot. They're like, Lloyd, that wasn't even my pick. That was the owner's pick. That was this guy, and it's whoever has the loudest voice in the room. And with the Philadelphia Eagles, it's Howie Roseman. I'm sure Laurie has a little input, but once they earmark their guy, and they probably have, and it's probably offensive lineman, they're going to move around and do the best to pull the trigger and grab them. You saw that with the Carson Wentz pick that we talked about. They earmarked them, they moved up and got them. So, you know, and it was Jalen Carter last year who they moved up and got, and he started out well, and we'll see if they'll get some returns on him. Boy, that went quick, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. That's why Lloyd and I were talking before the show, and it was like we got a lot of content this week. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah. So another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. We're glad that Kevin Midget could join us, and Angel did a great job producing this show for another week. And we will talk to you after the draft. We'll go over all the news and notes what happened in Detroit. So thanks for joining, and we will talk to you later.